I'm going to read a little excerpt from my journal.
I can't wait.
My journal has so much wisdom in it, and I go back and I read journal entries from months ago, and there are so many themes that overlap, but I also read them and think to myself, did I write that?
Mhm.
Meaning I know it's channeled from whether you call it my higher self or guides, whatever it is. In this particular one, I started the day, this was back in November, I started the day saying, welcome. I am like listening, like whatever comes through is coming through. And this is the short little message that came through. The things you think are important lay outside of you through your ego's perspective to conform to social norms. But to be complicit in this journey through life is giving up your inheritance, your power gifted to you through this incarnation. It is wise to know that the limits you put on yourself can be transcended once you realize who you are, and you are the one who's putting them on yourself to learn through. And when you place blame on another, you're actually blaming yourself because the other person is you. And does blaming someone ever fix your problems? Do you change your behavior when you blame someone, or do you change your thinking? Typically, no. You stay the same. You don't change. Then another lesson presents itself in the form of a person, and what do? You place blame on them. Your ego benefits from blame because it thinks it's separate from other people. It gives you this false illusion to disempower you and control you. You cannot be controlled when you know who you truly are. Control is an illusion. Nothing is controllable in the universe.
I love that. You're absolutely right. I think there's so much wisdom there.
Yeah. And it kind of starts, I think the main thing I would like to touch on is blame.
Okay.
Because I am a recovering blamer. Yeah, what's the right word? And it was just it kept me small. It kept me in victimhood, and well, I am kind of placing myself on a pedestal. I can do no wrong, because if I can do no wrong, I'm not learning.
Yeah, it's like bending the world to make yourself feel right.
Yeah.
At every moment, rather than like bending yourself to be right or to change and grow.
Yeah. And I tend to fall into the pattern of blame still, but I catch myself much more easily and quickly. And it is met with trying to understand what part of me is blaming, whether it be, my inner child, inner teen, or shadow ego.
Right.
But exactly as this little journal entry says, first and foremost, I think you really need to become aware of who you are, because once you realize who you are, you realize who everybody else is. And through the spiritual awakening that we've had over the past several years, like, we do understand we all come from one thing, one source, one creator, whatever you want to call that, but so does everybody else. So I am this creator, if you want to label it as that, manifesting in the form of a human identifying herself as like Elise, to learn through this reality, to learn the lessons that I came to learn. And I also know that I chose this life, and I chose the characters that are playing this game with me, or roles in this play, whatever you want to also label this reality as. So to blame someone else when I know that they're me, just in a different form, and I also told them and agreed to what they're doing, it's funny to think about. I know it sounds so silly, but when you realize that, it's comical, because I would rather have this perspective. Anybody listening to it can call me crazy, whatever label you want to use, but I love crazy, I love weird, because I'd rather think this way and like look at that person, even if in the moment I feel a lot of blame, a lot of anger, a lot of disgust, a lot of trigger, that I'm immediately met with a sigh of release, an energy release, saying, oh, but wait, you're doing this for me.
Mhm.
There's something to learn here. Okay, let me take a step back and kind of grasp. Let me go inward. Let me see where I can improve.
Yeah.
Because I've also realized I cannot change anyone. I cannot change the behavior of others. I must change myself. I must change the perspective that I have of this other person.
Yeah. And I think we both kind of agree that we're like 100% responsible for everything that happens in our experience.
Yeah.
But I think that even if we're not,
Mm.
even if we're only 1% responsible, it still, I think, makes sense to assume we're 100% responsible so that we can access 100% of that 1%.
Mm. Oh,
Right.
okay.
So if it's like, okay, like maybe I'm completely wrong. Like I think that as I go out into the world, my inner state is being reflected out to me and the
Mm-hmm.
lessons that I need to learn in order to grow and align with the intentions I've set and the life I want to live and my purpose and all that. And I believe it's 100% that that's all that's happening is like we're all in this game together. We're all one. We're all the same person. And maybe that's not the whole picture. Maybe it's just one little part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I assume it is and I take 100% responsibility
Mm.
and I go out into the world and somebody does something to me
Mm.
and I'm like, oh, okay, this person's doing this for me. What's the lesson in that? How do I grow? How do I benefit? And I do, and I learn the lesson and I benefit. Maybe I don't benefit 100%. Maybe I only benefit 1%. But if I blamed that person, I wouldn't have benefited that 1% either.
Yes,
So
that's a great
from
way
a
to put it.
practical and like utilitarian standpoint, it makes sense to just assume that we have 100% control.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it turns out I'm right, and I think, like I said, I think we agree on this. So if it turns out that we are right,
Mm.
then it's just like exponential growth because it's that 1% sliver is actually 100%, and we're growing from everything.
Yeah. It also, it's such an interesting pattern to keep yourself in the blame game
Mm-hmm.
as a victim because it just brings more resentment and separation. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the trick of the ego.
Yeah.
It's not even the trick, actually. It is, I mean, the ego can be tricky, but the ego's job is to keep us safe and separate. Like it thinks that we're separate from everybody when we are all one, just with thousands of different beliefs and conditions and programs. So
Yeah.
being able to recognize that I'm blaming this person for something that I couldn't control them doing. Also,
Right.
it's like like the
Like
little thing said, nothing in the universe is controllable. Really, I mean, you can control actually how you respond, or when you respond and it's a reaction, you can fix that.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Like
um,
you can to an extent like control what you think about a situation.
yes,
And
yeah,
that's pretty much it, I think.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. I'd have to really flesh that out, but like
Maybe something else
it's
to
yeah.
talk about. Yeah.
But I think that that's where we stand with will. Like we can have a
Mm.
will and desire and intention,
Mm.
but then whatever happens, and
Mm.
it's sort of the sense that we make of it and the way that we think about it and the way that we interpret it
Yeah.
is the only thing we have any control over. Things are just going to happen. So I think to blame somebody or judge somebody is to assume that what happened could have happened a different way and that would have been better. But I don't think that it's possible
Mm.
in this reality, in this timeline, for anything to be any different than it is. So that's where you like when you said things aren't controllable. I think that that's sort of what it means, where it's we think that we can control a situation, but that situation is just going to be exactly what it is. All
Mm.
we can control is the story about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, I was just like just I was just thinking about like blame, and it's like you said before, victim. Like
Mm.
anytime you're casting blame on something, you're making yourself a victim to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like weak thinking too. Like that's that way, then your story and your concept of yourself as victim.
Yes. I completely agree. And exactly like I had written here, do you ever change your
Yeah,
behavior if
I
you
know.
blame? I
I
just
love
want to
that.
kind
Yeah.
of touch
Yeah.
upon it. And it's like I said, I was the queen of the blame game my whole life. I mean, like I said, I catch myself now doing it, but I would blame everyone and anyone I could. Oh, I did this because of that, or I am this way because I was brought up this way, or I am this way and I think this way about money because I went here and my friends had
Mhm.
this. Everything, it was like keeping me contained within this bubble that my ego created to identify through.
Yeah. So blame's essentially like a coping mechanism so that you
Yeah,
don't have to change.
I was just gonna say, and then I got so effing sick and
Mhm.
tired of actually like that cycle of guilt, shame, resentment, constantly blaming until I was like, wait a minute. I'm sure throughout this, 10-year wellness journey, something came
Yeah.
to me that was
Yeah.
saying, you have to change yourself, not change other. But do you remember when I used to always
Mhm.
argue with you? Like, why am I the one who has to
Yep.
change?
Yeah. Yep.
I said it constantly. Like I get so furious because I I do feel I've changed so
Of
much.
course. Yeah.
But it can get very daunting when I think I felt I was changing so much and I probably wasn't changing nearly as much as I thought because my perception was still um
Yeah.
not at the level where I was still blaming others. So I just needed more work to do. That's probably again the ego's like kind of last trick and grip to help to try to keep me
Yeah. It's like,
in
oh,
that
you
state.
can think you're changing, but like yeah, we'll just keep you in another cycle where you're stuck in a pattern of, oh, I've changed so much and nobody else is changing and
Yeah.
it's so hard and I'm such a victim.
Yes.
And that's not actually growth.
Yeah.
It's just another cycle.
And that's also what it means when I wrote down here that you can transcend that. Like you
Mhm.
can transcend that narrative that has been running in your mind when you know who you are.
Yeah.